So I'm Guy Podjarny, or Guypo. I'm indeed the founder and CEO of Tessl. And I'm here to talk about how do you lead sort of a big transformation with AI and not just incremental. A little bit about me. I'm officially a startup addict. I founded 3 companies, founded Blaze, sold it to Akamai, became CTO there for a bunch of years, founded Snyk, grew that, at the peak was $8.5 billion valuation, definitely a multi-billion-dollar company now. And then a year and a half ago, indeed accepted I am an addict and I want to do it again, and left Snyk to found an AI company in Tessl. And I'm also an active angel investor in a variety of companies. Kind of these are just some of the examples. I want to kind of, as I go through this presentation and I talk about bits of advice, one of the things I get to do with these amazing companies is learn from their journey and distill some of my learnings and my opinions to say these are the types of advice that I give these different founders. And so the first bit of advice that I truly believe in is that startups should anchor in the future, right? If you're founding a company, then the best case scenario is that in 5 years' time, you have like a fraction of the revenue of that market, right? And if your problem is less important in 5 years' time, you're in trouble. You're going to get stuck. And so you have to think about things that are getting bigger, that would be more needed in the future. And you have big examples of this, like Google's aspiration to manage the world's information, organize it, or Microsoft's a computer on every desk. And those are clearly big missions. Things that are a little bit closer to us, for Snyk, we believed that software development will become faster and faster, and that security will become more and more important. And you put the two together, software development, like security has to be embedded into software development because nothing else will scale. So I believe in the future. Sierra, a company I invested in, is a data security company, last valued at $6 billion. Their thesis is that there will be more data, the data will be more important, it'll be more created by empowered teams, so everybody will be creating data, and therefore kind of wrangling and securing that data will be more important. And earlier in the journey, Cloudinary, which you might know, they came along and they believed, before it was known, that the web will become more visual, there will be more images, more videos, and that those will be a natural part of the application. And therefore, we have to make them easy to do image manipulations, media manipulations, and we have to make them dev first. The challenge is that in AI, predicting the future is kind of hard. It's hard to know what's going to happen next week, let alone next quarter, like 5 years from now, who knows, right? We have all of our dystopian futures to select from that Hollywood provides, and it's really hard to guess. And so to tackle that, when I think about it as a company builder or as an investor, I think about AI in 2 axes. One is an axis of trust, and the other is one of change. The trust axis asks the question, how much do I need to trust that the AI will succeed to be able to get any value out of that? And it goes from attended to autonomous. Let's look at some examples. GitHub Copilot is an example of a very attended, very low trust product. The original product allows you to autocomplete code. You look at every completion, you say if you take it or not, right? It needs to work often enough to be useful. Otherwise, it's just noise, but it's a low trust environment. To contrast that, a robotaxi, right, a Waymo, is a high trust environment. You're literally entrusting your life in the hands of this thing. If you don't believe that it would work practically all the time, you're in trouble. And in between, the local intercom with FinAI is a great example of, if you have an automated support engineer, it's not practical for you to review every response it's going to send to a customer. So you have to believe that it works. If you have to review all the results, you're going to lose all the value from the product. The second axis is an axis of change. So the question is, how much do I need to change the way I work to make this product work or to get value out of this product? And so again, GitHub Copilot was a good example of low change, just works in your IDE. It's like IntelliSense autocompletion on steroids. And then Cursor came along and did something a little bit different. Now you can ask questions about your code base and such in chat within that environment. And then that continues to Claude Code, which is quite different. Talks about a terminal-based development experience that starts making us doubt, are IDEs going to be around in the future and what is that looking like? So that's a change, a disruptive change. And ChatGPT itself is a disruptive change. It's about a very different way in which we work. And that's why we start saying, well, can they disrupt Google? Can they disrupt everything to an extent? So these 2 axes help. But then when you come back to anchoring in the future, the top right is that future. You say, well, what happens in your domain when we've earned the trust? The AI has earned the trust. It works well enough, and we've adapted to use it. In Tessl's case, our vision has always been that software development will move from being code-centric to being spec-centric. That's our conviction. Just a couple of words on that. We think that instead of rotating your sort of software, your application around the implementation, we'll be in a world in which you define what your product does and how you want it to work, but just to the level of detail that you want. So just define what you want, and AI will fill in the gaps, and it will handle the implementation. Once you do that, over time, you can focus on evolving your product, evolving your functionality, and you can leave the optimizations, you can leave the maintenance, importantly, to AI, because it will handle the coding. And eventually, that gets us to a world in which the code is disposable. You can just click a button and you regenerate it. We're not there yet, but you'll get there, and that would allow for very adaptable, very personalized, very dynamic code. So that's exciting, but it is very clearly in the future. It is not quite doable today. It's significant change. How do you build software like this? How do you debug it, observe it, version it, collaborate on it? And so it's a future. It's important. We anchor in the future, but all of our prospective users are down there at the bottom left. And so if we're sort of floating over there, nobody's going to use it today. We've been on this journey. So that gets me to the second principle. It's probably the least, most cliche thing that I repeat to founders I invest in, which is meet your users where they are. And it's very obvious, you want to engage with users in their reality. And in the world of AI, that is that bottom left world, right? It's something that doesn't require them to trust AI with all of the concerns around it. Like they can see and observe, decide if it's real, and works within their current workflows, clearly easier than changing. And so this quadrant is where we see most of the action. It's a fierce battle, red ocean, so many different companies, but it's the place in which we see these types of headlines of Cursor skyrocketing to $500 million and $10 billion valuation, now rumored to be $30 billion valuation, Mercor and others. But then right next to that, you start doubting the durability of these things, and you see, a hiccup in Cursor's pricing that they had at some point, making people, run for the hills and go, maybe go to windsurf or whatever the idea du jour was at the time. Then you start seeing Claude Code come onto the scene. That's a terminal-based development environment that also skyrocketed to $400 million. Is that the end of Cursor? Although Cursor is still a baby in startup company time. And before this even establishes, OpenAI Codex comes along, and there are those who predict the demise of Claude Code. And so it's all this reality of massive revenue opportunity, massive revenue, fierce competition, and very dubious durability. And so these companies, it's not that they're not good and they're not durable, it's just that we don't know. It's all new, it's all fresh. And so when you think about what makes them durable, I believe that it is about going either up or to the right, and eventually both. So let's talk about up. To become durable, they can go up the autonomy route. This is really about switching to more of a delegation, more of an outsourcing type approach in which AI takes bigger and bigger and bigger tasks. I'll use a couple of examples here. You can use the bottom left quadrant. That's the sort of the normal route, maybe, which is, see what are people doing there today, what they can use, and then think about how do you move up. Traversal is an example of an AI SRE company. So they are looking to create an AI kind of DevOps engineer, right? Someone who will handle the operations and the running of your system. And that is their future, but it's hard to do today. So they start today with things like root cause analysis. Look at the data. Why did an outage happen? Tell me what it is. I can review that. I can attend to it. Genie AI is a UK-based company that eventually aspires to be an AI lawyer and handle a bunch of that legal for you. But in the meantime, that's problematic, but they can do some redlining for you. They can do some proposals for you, some review of a contract that would help you out. Other startups are leaping a little bit more into the top, and they're picking the specific tasks that they do. So Parcha is an example of a know your client, know your business, KYC, KYB type analyst, and they leverage the fact that this is already a type of offering that companies typically outsource. And so instead of outsourcing it to the company, why don't you out to some sort of offshore country? Why don't you come and outsource it to AI? And it has all that advantages. And they work, and they can slightly fake it till they make it. Now they're past that to be able to make it work at the beginning. And so is an AI automation. They build agents that allow sort of small businesses to create things like something that handles their marketing, their sales, their social media, or others. And so, again, it's a very narrow task. And what they do is their platform allows small businesses to create that. Eventually, the tasks have to be autonomous. So their belief is that they can build the IP, they can build the technology to make this work. And there's no correct solution or not, but you have to think about if you're going up that route, that's really an IP route and an outsourcing and autonomy route. If you do this, one of the challenges that you have is that you are playing in the incumbents world. So Enso is a good example. They do this SMB automation. Another company that has very similar pitch is Salesforce. Salesforce is also doing this agent force ability of sort of automating and creating agents that automate processes. They're not SMB, so it's a bit useful for Enso, but they're playing within the grounds, right, within the workflows that are today, because it's not about change. And so they really have to kind of run and outpace those giants. And that's why I'm very fond of the to the right motion, which is the change motion. I feel like that's very natural for startups to do. And I kind of think of it as the disruption corner. And the intent here is sort of change up how things are done, maybe quite substantially. And my favorite example here is Synthesia, which does text to video. So in text to video, there's effectively zero chance that the current giants in video production will be the ones that win this world. It is an entirely different skill. It doesn't require cameras and productions and systems. There's different workflows. It's entirely different. And because it's entirely different, it's hard for people to embrace it, but it is an opportunity to disrupt the current power, to disrupt the current incumbents who are really incentivized to actually have this not happen. This is the classic innovator's dilemma. So I love this kind of corner, but it's also a harder one to drive people to embrace, which gets me to the third and maybe my favorite thing to tell customers or tell founders, and that is nobody cares about your product. It's good advice, no? Well, I do continue and I say what they do care about is they care about the problem that you're solving for them. And as founders, as builders, we love what we build. We're excited by it and we love talking about it. But oftentimes we do that too much. And what users want to hear about, what they care about is what is it that you're doing for me? What is the pain that you're alleviating? What is the problem that you're solving? And so it's important if you go down that change route to find the problem that customers want you to use or want you to solve today. In the case of Synthesia, they found a really good example in learning platforms. So they had all these training videos, like McDonald's training all of their workforce across the world about how to use the systems. They wanted it to be in video form, but just the methodology, it was very hard, it was very expensive, very slow to create. So it kept failing them. So there was a pain, there was a need that they can solve with text to video, even before the text to video had the expressive nature, like the videos were still kind of robotic and it wasn't quite there. So they got in that way. They built a very successful business that way, and they continue to grow it as their technology improves and they can do things like role playing or sales or recruiting. So that was a good example. And at Tessl, we were looking for this. Say, well, what is it that connects Tessl to the ground instead of sort of floating there to the top right? And the solution that we found was these out-of-control agents. And this is interesting because in the world of AI, sometimes a new problem comes up. Like this problem that I'm going to talk about here did not exist when I founded Tessl. So what is this problem? Well, development, I'm talking about software development. So like development agents and agents as a whole, they're very powerful, but they're highly unreliable, right? You oftentimes see something like this where they come along and says, well, I built the app, it's working. It's like, no, it doesn't. And of course, then you'll get the compliment of, you're absolutely right. I fixed it. It's like, no, you didn't. And so you have to deal with this. It's very hard to trust what they say, and therefore you have to review. It becomes this review fatigue becomes an issue. Similarly, they can be disastrous, right? They do this reward-seeking behavior, and so you ask them to build a feature, and they'll burn down the house to get it done, right? And they don't care. They don't know necessarily what it is that they need to preserve. And so you always have to supervise them, which gets taxing. And it turns out you can actually solve a lot of this with specs, with clarity of knowledge of what is it that you're supposed to do and what do you not. And so we evolved into Tessl keeps agents on Rails using spec-driven development, which is the term. And that's been very helpful and allowed us to place something at that bottom left, which is you have a pain today because this 2x2 always moves as we change. So while you're using development agents, which is a subset of the population, you have this pain. We will help you address that, and that would move you towards the future reality of spec-driven development. So that was helpful, but it was still hard. So we have these conversations, very high rate of interest, very high rate of acceptance that this is the future, but still like not snappy enough around motivation of like, what is my pain today? And that gets me to the last sort of bit of advice here that I share often, and I find very reusable, is the change happens when you care more than it is hard. So this is sort of true in life, right? If you want to go on a diet, you might care very much about dropping weight, but it's just too hard and you don't do it, right? And sometimes when using social media, you really don't care to watch the next video, but it's so easy. It's so easy that you do it anyway. And in general, when you think about technology products, this is the formula that implicitly happens to all of us. We do something because we care more than it is hard. And these are the two levers that we have as product builders, as founders, when we go to change customer behaviors as well. You should care more than it is hard. So either work to increase how much you care or to find a problem you care about more, or we work to make it less hard. And at Snyk, for instance, developers care about security somewhat, like to a degree, but we made it so easy to embrace our products that it really triggered, like, why wouldn't you? And we got the adoption that we did. And so in the context of Tessl, when we talk about AI agents, we realize there are more immediate pains around how agents build. We see people had issues with the fact that agents failed to use new open source libraries that came about after the training data of the LLM, or very old ones, or ones that played with the APIs over the years. We see that they really don't know at all how to use internal libraries or platforms. How do they even know what your best practices are? So you have to inform them about it. And we also see that all of these specs, all of these bits of knowledge you have to inform the agents about, they're shared in very inefficient manners, right? It's sort of a copy-paste over Slack. And so that was an opportunity for us, and we built a new product, which is the spec registry, and we kind of populated it with a bunch of specs. Hopefully that sounds familiar, which explain how to use different pieces of software, and we help organizations generate those specs for them, generate this internal knowledge base, and distribute that to their agents. And so we created that, we separated out. You always need clarity in your messaging about define how your agent build in one product and define what your agents build in the other. And we aligned that sort of journey, right? And says, well, the immediate pain is Tessl spec registry, and over time we get you into the Tessl framework. So this journey is a journey, right? And it is a learning, and in AI, it is more learning than ever. And so before I wrap up, I want to share, like, I have some experience, but I want to share some advice from a much more successful entrepreneur than I am, which is Jeff Bezos, from just a couple of weeks ago, and I loved his quotes. And he was talking about wondering, right? And he was saying that wondering is so important because wondering is a humility, right? Sometimes people think about, well, how much should I wonder? How much should I discover here versus decide? And because it sounds so inefficient, sounds like a waste of time, I keep looking for what it is that I'm supposed to do. But the only way to go straight into your destination is if you know where you're going. And sometimes you do not know where you're going, or you don't know how to get there, even more importantly. And so wondering is that acknowledgement that, in life and in business and in many other aspects and in building a company, a lot of the time you can see the mountaintop, but you can see the trail. And I've been using that analogy in-house oftentimes, which is we've been kind of wandering around and trying to find a trailhead. And this agent reality has given us a trailhead. We've always been chasing the same mountain, but it's important to sort of know where you start. And this wondering is not a waste. It's a learning, it's an appreciation, it's an internalization of what is it that is needed. So if you have to explore and you have to wonder, maybe it's inefficient, but it's actually very valuable. And it's a recognition, a humility about the change about not knowing how do you get there. And the good news is that if you don't know how to get there, oftentimes nobody else does as well. And so this exploration is the learning and it's the growth that allows you to get there first. So to summarize, startups should anchor in the future, right? Maybe this AI native future. Otherwise, you might get stuck and you don't want that reality. However, you have to meet users where they are. And so as you think about bridging those two, think about the problem that you're solving for your users and seek problems that they care about today and invest in both finding problems they care about a lot, but also in how do you make it easy for them to solve those problems. And if you crack that equation, you can affect change and you can get them to adopt your products. And if you do all of those and you do them well, then you can create an AI revolution and not just an evolution. Thank you.